7,000 years ago, a man is lying very still while another human presses a sharpened stone against his skull and begins to scrape. They are not trying to kill him. They are trying to help him. They are opening a hole in his head. He is awake for it. Because this, believe it or not, was one of the ways ancient humans dealt with a headache. Hold on to that image. Because by the end of this, you are going to understand exactly how a person ends up drilling into a living skull and calling it medicine. And it is going to make the little pill in your drawer feel like a miracle. Let me back up. Today, a headache is nothing. You reach into a drawer, swallow a tablet, and 20 minutes later, it is gone. You do not even think about it. You have probably already forgotten the last one you had. Now take all of that away, every bit of it. No pill, no drawer, no pharmacy, no idea what a brain even is. Out of nowhere, a pain has switched on inside your head. It is coming from somewhere deep inside the one part of you that you can never look into. Sit with how terrifying that actually is. Pain almost always has a place, but this pain has no wound and no reason. It just arrives, fills your skull, and then, hours later, mysteriously leaves again. To an ancient human, that is not an inconvenience. That feels like something is happening to them, something with intent. So the first humans did what humans have always done when they are in pain and out of answers. They experimented. Start with the willow tree. Somewhere, someone with a pounding head chewed on its bitter bark, and slowly, the ache loosened its grip. They had no idea why. They could not have known that willow bark is loaded with a chemical extremely close to the active ingredient in aspirin. Think about that. The exact pill you reach for today, the #1 painkiller on earth, was hiding inside a tree, and desperate people found it thousands of years before anyone could explain a single thing about how it worked. Used it for centuries, and then humanity basically forgot why it worked until modern chemistry rediscovered it. The oldest painkiller and the newest painkiller are the same painkiller, and willow was just the start. Humans kept stumbling onto real relief. Tight bands wrapped around the skull and cinched down, which sounds like torture, but may have genuinely dulled the throb by pressing on the blood vessels feeding the pain. Cool river mud smeared across the forehead, retreating into the dark and silence of a cave, which is exactly what a person with a migraine still craves today. These people were running a giant, blind, painful experiment across thousands of years with their own throbbing heads as the laboratory. And piece by piece, they built a toolkit that actually, sometimes, worked. But then the remedies start getting strange. Because when the easy fixes failed, people got creative. In ancient Egypt, one written remedy was to take a small clay model of a crocodile, pack herbs into its mouth, and bind it tightly to the sufferer's head with a strip of linen inked with the names of gods. But that tight band squeezed the head, the patient lay still, and everyone fully expected it to work, so people often did feel better. The crocodile got the credit. Belief, it turns out, is a powerful painkiller. Elsewhere, people reached for a live electric fish, a torpedo ray, the kind that delivers a genuine shock, pressed straight onto the aching head, a real jolt of current to stun the pain into silence, ancient shock therapy delivered by seafood, and numbing pain with electricity is not even a bad idea. We still do it today. They just used a fish. Then there was blood. For a huge stretch of history, the answer to almost any ailment was to open a vein and let some run out. Too much blood in the head, the thinking went, was causing the pressure, so you drained a little off. Leeches on the temples. Veins nicked into a bowl. It did nothing, and it left the patient weaker, but it looked decisive, and a desperate person in pain will always take action over helplessness. And when bleeding failed, some healers turned to fire. A red-hot iron pressed to the scalp, the idea being that a fresh, screaming pain might drive out the invisible one underneath. Fight pain with pain. People volunteered for it, because when your head is pounded for days, you will let someone burn you if you believe it might stop. Now notice the pattern. The crocodile, the fish, the bleeding, the burning, everyone is a person clawing at something they cannot see. And that is the key to this whole story. It is the reason a headache, of all things, drove humans to the unthinkable. Because a headache shows you nothing, and when a person cannot see the cause of their suffering, the mind refuses to accept the mystery. It reaches for a story. And the story humans landed on was the same chilling idea. There is something in there, a spirit that slipped in, a demon that took hold, an evil little worm, some believed, burrowing through the head, a dark pressure that crept into the skull and now sits there, throbbing, refusing to leave. Then there is only one thing left to try. You give it a way out. You open the head and you let it escape. This is trepanation, cutting, scraping, sawing, or drilling a hole straight through the skull of a living, breathing, wide-awake person to release whatever evil was trapped inside. And I need you to understand this was not some rare, one-time act of madness. This was everywhere. We have dug up thousands of these skulls from every inhabited continent on the planet. Peoples who could not possibly have learned it from one another all arrived at the same terrifying idea. Some of these skulls are more than 7,000 years old, which means trepanation may be the single oldest surgery the human species has ever performed. Older than writing, older than the wheel. The tools were whatever was sharp. A flake of flint, a sliver of volcanic obsidian, which can hold an edge finer than a modern scalpel. A pointed stone worked back and forth, scraping away layer after layer of bone, while the patient lay there and felt every second of it. There was no anesthetic in most of the world, just strong hands holding you down, and time. But in one place, they had something. High in the Andes Mountains of South America, the people became the undisputed masters of this craft. They performed trepanation so often and got so good at it that it borders on unbelievable. They chewed coca leaves, the same plant behind a famous numbing drug, and may have packed that mash into the wound to dull it. And now, here is the number that should genuinely rearrange your understanding of the ancient world. In some of these Andean populations, the survival rate for skull surgery reached as high as 80 or 90%. Compare that to the battlefield surgeons of the 1800s, thousands of years later, who were losing more than half of their trepanation patients to infection. Let that sink in. So the question you are dying to ask, did any of it actually work? Honestly, sometimes. Maybe. If a person had bleeding or swelling building up pressure beneath the skull after a blow to the head, then cutting a hole and releasing that pressure could genuinely save their life. But for an ordinary everyday headache, the hole did nothing. There was no demon. There was no worm. What helped was the crushing power of belief and the simple fact that a person who has survived having their skull opened is extremely motivated to announce that they feel much, much better now. So the next time your head is pounding and you reach for that tiny tablet that quietly erases the pain in 20 minutes, stop for just 1 second and hold it in your hand. Because you are holding the very end of an unbelievably long, unbelievably desperate story. Humans have always been willing to do absolutely anything to make the pain stop. You were just lucky enough to be born after the hole in the head.